How's it going? My name's Simon. Firstly, this is not a talk about opensource. This is just the only slide template that I happen to have. So, quick about me. I'm from Adelaide. I've been using Linux since 2003-ish. I've been contributing to opensource for 8 years. I started out packaging the Enlightenment desktop, and then somehow, somewhere along the way, I ended up being a SUSE employee. But probably more relevant to this talk is one of the things that I've always enjoyed and loved about Linux is being able to customise, hack, modify whatever I'm doing. Way back in my first days of computing, I remember it was either Windows 95 or 98, where you could inject HTML into your home folder and do cool little things, and that's where I started. And somewhere I found Linux and eventually discovered you can change basically everything. And that's what got this talk started. I started playing with themes probably 10 or so years ago, and from that, it kind of led me to start thinking about, often we make user interfaces to be a functional user interface, but what if instead of trying to make a functional user interface, we give the function of a user interface far less importance, and we try and make a work of art, an interactive work of art instead. And so I've been thinking about that for years, and that's what's kind of spawned this talk, and we'll probably get back onto this form versus function thing throughout the talk as an ongoing thread. So I thought we'd start this talk with some history. We're going to start in the 90s. There was people doing computer art before that at SIGGRAPH, and in the 80s there was demo groups, but I was like this big then, and someone else can probably give a far better talk about that who was there at the time. So we're going to start in the 90s. And in the 90s, there was a guy called Raster, and he was sick of the boring Linux user interfaces of CDE and whatever at the time, and he saw his games, and his games had pretty menus with like leaves and stuff down the side, and he thought, why can't I have my desktop look as cool and as pretty as some of the games? So here is a couple of random game menus to get from that era to get you excited. It's surprisingly hard to find game menu pictures on Google, and so I didn't find many, but here's a couple. It's a personal favourite of mine. And so from that you can kind of get the artistic element, and him being a software engineer, he got about it and he started doing it, and he created the Enlightenment desktop. And eventually around 2000 we were at Enlightenment 16. Now, one of the great things about open source is it is still possible to run Enlightenment 16 on a modern rolling release laptop. And so that's what we're going to do. Another great thing is I found this archive of 170 different Enlightenment themes from the very late 90s, early 2000s, and I thought it would be fun to have a look at that. Now, for anyone interested in the technical details, we're using an X11 program called Zypher. It allows you to create a X11 window that you can run a desktop inside of your desktop. And so if I move the mouse to the right spot, here we have E16 with one of the more basic something theme that I picked at some point. But if we come down to themes, if it goes all the way over there, I can't read it, but that's okay. There is a lot, and I figured that this one kind of shows the kind of vibe. This is probably. One we're done. We'll go back to them in a minute. Let's have if I launch the menu over here, I can read it. There's like an about window, some settings, And this is all the kind of, when you think about the equivalent of the day was Windows 98 or Gnome and KDE 1. Here we are doing a fair bit, and I'm not sure how this will go. I pre-picked a list of nice themes, but I can't read most of them from here. So we might do some random ones as well. But, E13 was one on my list. This, I guess, was the default theme for E13, which came, and it's... This was a default theme. And so as you can see, people were able to take this. The other hard thing here is I don't have a mouse. And to get the right menu, you need to middle click. No, I'm good. Now, this next one really is worth showing. Can anyone see a BS-E somewhere over there?
Yeah. To the right, it talks up.
That one. Now this, if you thought that one was great. But this one gets truly good when
You know what BSE is?
No.
That's mad cow disease.
Yeah. Well, when you have a look at the menu, and this is getting on to the concept of this talk is why don't we just do things for fun because we can do things for fun, not because anyone would actually want to use this regularly. But it gets even better when it has to show. I think that says Aqua. Okay. This is OS X from the day style theme, I believe. All right. Let's live risky and let's just pick something at random. So you set out to create a user interface or a toolkit where you had the freedom to go and make whatever you wanted. And if you wanted to make crazy video game style UIs, that's what you could do. And that is E16. And if I do this right, my slide should be back here. All right, that is the list of themes we were going to go through. So I know Arch, OpenSUSE still have E16 packages. These slides have the link to all those themes. So go have some fun, start it up and run it for yourself. And so after the 90s, we come into the 2000s. And in the 2000s, there was a couple of things happening. This theming and skinning continued to grow. Some might say in a more polished, professional kind of way. But there were some cool things. And it was not just a Linux thing. There was even crazier people using Windows XP and Vista who did DLL injection in order to make crazy skins. One such example is this one, which I think is actually a Windows XP theme, believe it or not. That got ported to Gnome. And I was rather delighted when I was writing this talk the other day and found that someone has recently ported this theme to GDK3 and XFCE. So for all your 2000s and And so this is, and you've got some nice menus and stuff like that. And if we come back to the slides, that is that theme. That is where you get it. If you're running modern XFCE, you can try it. It's good fun. The other thing that happened is 3D graphics got better, which meant we didn't just need to create needlessly stupid cow menus. We could start to create other needlessly stupid things like 3D animations. Now, I have been tempting the desktop gods and the demo gods a lot today, but one thing I was not willing to do is to swap desktops mid-talk. And so seeing as this, to run Compiz, still works on XFCE, but to do that you need 3D graphics, which means the last trick didn't work, and so I'm going to have to run up a video for you, which I forgot to prepare, sorry. Oh, no. I have done poorly there. I am sorry. There is now a video running behind that slide.
Watching it with my third eye.
But I suspect that if I come down here, and now I try, here we can watch a lovely video of Compiz. It's the same theme. You notice that with Compiz we don't get the nice window borders, but we started to get these cool pop-up things. You could nicely move between different desktops. Some of these features that Compiz introduced are kind of useful. I used to use the desktop wall. It worked great. We'll get there. Here you go. So we have our wobbly windows. Yep, that's next. There's your fish tank. And all that nice 3D-ness, and that's a very functional, nice alt tabber. But I believe that in a second, when I find the key binding in this video, it might even start to, there we go, now it's raining. And eventually when you've got too much rain, you might want the windscreen wiper to turn on. Eventually. Oh, there we go. And in a second, it might even just start to snow. And it's snowing all around the fish tank. You can actually put a snow dome inside the cube as well, or we can be going to hyperspace with the stars. And now we're going to scroll through. I'm not sure how well you can read them. But beyond the things I did, there is this whole list of cool things that if you're running Mate or XFCE, and at least on OpenSUSE, it works out of the box. And I'm guessing other distros it probably does too. So if you want some nostalgia, you can also go and play with that. Oh, we're going to finish with some wobbly windows. Oh, my mouse is back over here. So that was Compiz in the 2000s. I've lost my notes. All right, and so I thought it would only be fair that in 2009, 2010, one of the earlier themes I modified was this one. One of the downsides of some of these old things is that wallpaper is like 1080 by something, and now we have nice big monitors and there's no way just to get these nice old wallpapers, but there, that was a theme that I was working on around 2010. And we'll come back to there in a second, but then we get into the 10s, and in the last 10 years, everything kind of got much more boring. material design became the thing, everything became flat, which if you're like me and you work by recognizing visuals and shapes, looking at 20 of the same color icon does not help you. And the other thing that happened is tablets came around and everyone tried to be a tablet desktop, even though no one does that now. And so things got dumbed back and scaled back. And so one of the things I've missed in the last 10 years is we are no longer making these crazy fun things for the sake of making crazy fun things. So we should do more of that again. And so much so that I'd like to proclaim that some people say the year of the Linux desktop is yet to come and will be sometime in the future. I would like to make a bold prediction that the year of the Linux desktop was actually around 2010, 2011, when you could still do all these cool things in all the desktops, as opposed to only some of the smaller ones now. But there was some stuff that's been cool from an art perspective in the last 10 years. Sage and Mod had a lot of great themes, and that's become more mainstream. If you use a Samsung phone now, there is a theme store. There is a ton of cool themes. It's very hard to find many screenshots of them on Google, but I've tried a couple. That's a nice, some form of artistic. This one's verging on the flat, but it still has some artistic merit. And then you get to some crazy ones like this, where there is, if you go through the Samsung store, you can find some cool, funky things. But we haven't been doing as much of it in Linux. And that is disappointing, and that is something I think should change. So next, I want to take a bit of a segue. And one of the themes that comes through the ages is people like popular culture references in their themes, in everything. I'm going to start. This is not a new thing. If we come back to our E16, there's a theme here. It's hopefully even over this side somewhere. A Men in Black theme.
Is that the close button?
Those are the close, maybe. I don't know. It's very hard to use this. But so popular culture, it's been happening since the 2000s. I must say that I too am guilty of this. Now is where this talk starts to get into the realms of really risky for demos. Let's see if I can change my desktop theme. Because this is Enlightenment E23-ish. I still make themes for it. Once upon a time as a joke. Oh, it has not changed the wallpaper. I made this Hello Kitty theme, of which I probably should have included the screenshot because it doesn't have the wallpaper. Which is poor planning on my behalf, but it's nice and pink. And yeah, we don't want to use the theme wallpaper. No, so another issue one might have, ask me about this one again later. But another issue that one has when shipping themes is licensing. So to make this theme in any way licensable and so people don't get grumpy with me, it does not include the Hello Kitty wallpaper. But another example is this is Enlightenment's terminal. Suppose you want to change its theme to have a Pikachu. I need to do something with tab. Yes. Fish is too good as a shell and is tab completing everything. It's slightly broken. In a previous version, when the bell rang, the whole thing filled up with lightning. But someone wanted a known cat, and so I believe that that is in here as well. Where's my mouse gone? And of course, if you want to highlight things. Now, coming back to our slides, something that we are not running today. Oh, there's the video that was playing behind the slides. Let's get rid of that one. Something that we are not running today, of course, that was deeply popular is Hannah Montana Linux, where we had a whole Linux distro dedicated to popular culture. And so from here, we are going to wind things back to the slightly more serious. So you see a lot of cool desktop setups and screenshots. Conky is an incredibly configurable system manager. We'll look at that in a minute. If you want to have cool settings, Conky is your friend. If you want to be less extreme in your daily artistic endeavors, there is a wonderful program called Variety, and you give it a couple of sources and it will download a wallpaper for you every 5 minutes and change your wallpaper every 5 or 10 minutes. So if you're like me and get bored of looking at the same thing every day, it'll do that. It works through most desktops. That's worth checking out. Here is a screenshot of Conky. You can see it on the left over there. That's a pretty default setup. Here is one of my old screenshots, and you can see we've got Conky over here providing those curly CPU memory and swap. The XFCE theme I showed you before also has a Conky theme that looks incredible, but the download mirrors this morning were not liking me and I didn't get that image. And so you might be asking, well, if I wanted to make my own theme, that is probably going to be heaps of work. But in reality, in a lot of places, you can just change a few pictures and you can have a vastly different theme and you can learn as you go. That's kind of what I did. And so I thought I would inspire you all to go create some crazy themes because Linux needs more crazy themes. And so I thought I'd talk briefly about how one might do that. On Qt and KDE, it's a bit harder, unless you know C++. One day I'm going to use C++ to write a crazy style, but basically you're limited to 2 colors and changing. Having said that, I've seen some reasonably cool KDE screenshots in the last few days. So there are some base themes that you can mess with the colors and have something that'll look quite nice. GTK and Gnome is, if you've done any web development, it's quite simple. It uses a series of images and style sheets, and it's not that hard to pick up. Then coming through to Enlightenment. As you saw, we can do all sorts of crazy things with Enlightenment. That has downsides. The biggest downside for Enlightenment is that themes are tens of thousands of lines of code, which makes approaching them and starting them very hard to do. Originally, when I started doing this talk, I started writing this talk to motivate me to finish a project I've been working on that makes it easier to create themes just by changing images, because I needed some motivation to actually go and do it. Unfortunately for me, that just led to me getting sidetracked writing this talk, and those themes haven't progressed very far yet. But if you speak to me at the end of the conference, they might have got further. But there are still some things I can show you. So let's come back to on the settings panel. So for example, you are missing out on the full experience because where's that? So live demos, I've broken the theme selector. Enlightenment is a great desktop. When something is broken, you can just reset the whole thing. If it crashes, you just reset it, it'll recover. And here we go. So this is theme number 1. When we get there, this could be a premature end to my talk, but I still have a mouse cursor. That's concerning. I have now completely broken the laptop, which is unfortunate. Oh, here we go. You can't see it. Hang on. If I turn around this, see that white box there? That white box there is telling me that Enlightenment has crashed. but it gives me 2 options. I can press F12 to log out. I can press F1 to recover. And generally, pressing F1 to recover will actually do something useful. I don't know why that. We still have some slides. They're kind of there. You've just seen the next 2, but. So we have the new theme. Now, the only difference between this theme, let's test the demo gods again. We might just leave this theme, I think. I'll come back at the end, but the only difference between this theme and the theme I show you at the end is like 4 images. So here, in this, you can see this is the other theme, but if I do like if I play some magic in Git, thanks everyone, I now have that 9-cat theme. So there you go. Enlightenment's file manager has its moments. But if we come back over to here, that is the wrong, that's a nice blue, that's the next. So if we come back over here, most of what you're seeing here is just these various images that are the wrong ones and like a square with a bit of a gradient, or a bit of a gradient with a background. Most themes are pretty easy and simple. And I'm running very much out of time, which means I made this talk too long. So I'm going to cover a couple of little things very quickly. Imagemagick is an awesome program if you've never heard of it. If you have a collection of blue icons that you would like to be red, or a collection of green icons that you would like to be blue, you can use these scripts and you can programmatically change the whole thing. So for someone like me who uses Enlightenment's theme that normally just has everything blue, with scripts, you can change a lot. And in the last minute, we will try and get into that. So making things play nicely together. I have found that if you use GDK and you tell KDE to use the GDK2 theme, which is listed there, you can generally do some weird things and have all the applications looking roughly usable. And we're going to, I've changed my mind, we're going to finish with a collection of slide shots. I found this is a theme that I'm going to port going forward. This is the Enlightenment theme that really got me into Enlightenment and got me heading in this direction. It's called Grunge. It is also a theme I'm going to port for fun because I think it captures that artisticness. And now quickly coming through the last couple. This screenshot is here for nostalgia. I don't know if you can read in the About box, but it has a MySpace reference to a band. And so that's giving some And then we have a nice neon theme here that someone's done. This is another cool artistic. There's a very blue arch desktop. If you like having lots of terminals, you can make your terminals look pretty, or you can make your terminals look even prettier. And finally, I think this theme is probably the one I've found from the modern 2010s era where someone has actually gone and made something artistic and beautiful instead of plain and boring. And we should do more of this and go create more themes. If people are interested in more details on how to create themes, let me know. I can help you. If enough of you are interested, maybe we can have a mini conf on it. And finally, I know that says OpenSUSE, but I'd like to thank SUSE because they sponsored my travel. I'd like to thank you all for coming, and that's it. I don't know if we've got time for questions.